Idaho murder suspect 28-year-old Brian Kohberger was identified with the help of a direct-to-consumer genetics test like that of 23andMe, if not that company specifically. This method, genetic genealogy, has become a popular technique among law enforcement. You may remember it being used to catch the Golden State Killer, where investigators ran DNA that had been found at a crime scene and used it to match with familial DNA found through these genetic tests.
And while many applaud the suspect's capture, of course, data privacy experts are raising red flags. Podcaster Clint Russell points out this sentiment, tweeting, "Idaho mass murderer got caught because his parents had done 23andMe-style DNA tests. They then matched that to evidence at the scene. Glad he's caught. Very, very disturbed that the government can use that data, and no one seems to care."
Yeah, so this is very interesting. I'm seeing on social media some talk that it was 23andMe. We don't know if it's that company or something else. But what it sounds like is not actually this suspect, Kohberger, but maybe a family member, someone, used a service like 23andMe to compile their genetic profile. And then some DNA found at the crime scene, it could have been a hair, piece of hair, something else, piece of skin. They had that, and then they wouldn't know who that was because Brian Kohberger isn't in the criminal database. But they could find, because they have access, I guess, to some of these genetic testing companies' databases, so they're able to narrow it down to say, okay, well, look at everyone in that family, and they see, oh, actually, there's a member of that family or someone with a genetic similarity who lives in that area, and they had been seen in the same location or something. So then it goes from there.
They drive the white sedan. Yeah.
Right.
Look, some people might say, if you haven't done anything wrong, what's the problem?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I had to watch Gattaca in my 8th grade science class.
I have not seen Gattaca.
Okay, well, to update you on this 20-year-old movie, Robby, I mean, the point is that, it's in a future society where the fact of your DNA being on file is used to prevent you from going certain places, having certain kinds of jobs. It's a world where a lot of people are genetically modified, and people who have those genetic modifications get more privileges than people who have their regular normie DNA. And obviously, we're not in Gattaca. We're nowhere close to that reality. But the fact that DNA and biometrics are increasingly taken from us. We give up our eye scan at the airport. We do a finger pad to sign into the gym in our buildings, these kinds of things. This stuff is on file. And the day that we do take a dystopian turn, which seems likely, especially as we cover these stories about Amazon Ring cameras and those kinds of things, the way they're going to get us is by offering us convenience. They're going to say, give us your information freely. We'll tell you about your genealogy. We'll help tell you if a package has been stolen, et cetera. And it's going to be whiplash when we realize exactly what we've given up in terms of privacy and our rights to not be on the grid.
I think it's concerning. I also think it's frankly inevitable, and there's not a lot we can do to prevent it.
Well, what do you think about what they've done in Europe with respect to trying to do more to protect privacy rights? The right to be forgotten on the internet is something that they've worked to establish in Europe.
Yeah, I think I've said this before on the show. In the speech privacy trade-off, we go a little harder on protections for speech, and they go a little harder on protections for privacy. You couldn't have something like the right to be forgotten law in the U.S., frankly, because it would violate the First Amendment. You couldn't. The First Amendment the Supreme Court would say that their interpretation of the First Amendment is that the government can't obligate a company to get rid of a media company to get rid of speech or information about someone, even just because they want to. I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just kind of the reality here, which is why I talk about the inevitability of it. I do think privacy is a very important value, and it would be. I think some of just about the only laws I actually. Favor to maybe modify exactly what the regulations we have with regard to the internet have to do with increasing privacy around photos and information that can end up in other people's. I actually think there should be more obligation on tech companies to take down content that is posted by a third party that's yours, and they should not.
Revenge
and right now they'll say
laws.
there
are these
those
moments.
I do think are pretty
and we
compelling.
can make choices. The First Amendment exists. We also can make choices as a society about exceptions to it, limitations to it, as we decide as a society. It's not a tablet that's come down from God, and there are a lot of things that exist now that didn't exist when the Founding Fathers were thinking this stuff up. I think it's worth having a conversation as a society about whether we want to have this kind of more absolutist position that we're in. We have carved out various privacy rights outside of a constitutional context in Supreme Court jurisprudence. This recent decision in Dobbs was a big blow to one of the privacy rights that's been established by the courts. A lot of these marriage equality, interracial marriage, a lot of these other kind of cases, the right to contraceptive, to not having the police bang down your door and look to see if you're using a condom that's been outlawed in a state or doing a sodomy that's outlawed in the state, were all based on someone's right to privacy. So we have decided outside of the Constitution that stuff is important. The question is, are we going to be ahead of the ball and getting some legislation on the books that protects us before it's too late?
That reminds me of, and perhaps we should discuss this in greater detail for its own segment, but Louisiana has a new law aimed at restricting adolescents' access to pornography. Have you heard about this?
Oh, you have to put in your driver's license?
You're going to have to put in a driver's license to prove you're of an age to be allowed to consume pornography. And this is a law being celebrated by social conservatives, being foisted on us by Republicans. I don't know. That sounds concerning. You want to type in your driver's license, give that to every website on the planet.
It's not giving freedom, Republicans.
I don't know about that.
It's not serving freedom.
Well, the Federalist Avita Duffy Alfonso writes that during the early years of social media, no one could have predicted the kinds of power big tech companies would wield over freedom of expression, nor could we have imagined the sinister collusion between federal agencies and social media companies to silence political enemies of the left, engage in government psychological operations, and interfere in elections. Just as social media sites have been, DNA profiling will likely be abused in ways we are not yet aware of. And there will be cooperation. That's the other thing. That's what we're really seeing, and is alluded to there. The begrudging at first, resistance, then begrudging cooperation, then full cooperation that we've seen from Twitter as a result of these Twitter files. Same thing that could happen with 23andMe.
It's worth noting also that the lack of transparency means that a lot of these technologies are proven over time to not actually even do the thing that law enforcement says that they do. So, for example, cell tower information has been used to convict any number of people, putting alleged perpetrators in the scene of the crime. But over the years, we've realized that information is really inconsistent, especially in cities that are so densely populated. You have thousands and millions of people in a square block radius. And to juries, you see some science. You see an expert saying, oh, there was a cell phone that pinged in this area. Let's lock them up for good. But who knows what's going on? Who knows how legitimate the DNA collections are in these cases? How much, there were some cases of some of these DNA testing companies for dogs, to see if you actually got a pure breed or not, just wantonly sending whatever result in the world back.
I think my Yorkies are part Maltese.
Well, look, how could you even really ever know? This is the thing. So we should be also not so credulous about the efficacy of this technology in the first place.
Well, I promise to be an informed juror if I am picked in jury duty. I don't expect to be, and will do everything I can to get out of it so that I can be.
Robby.
What I really want to do is get back to work on the following Monday, so I'm going to try to get out of it.
All right. Well, we'll miss you either way, but we respect your civil responsibilities as well.
More Rising after this. Stay with us.